All right, I am now recording.
On record, I would like to say that I am so eternally sorry for sleeping through Friday morning's meeting. That was a huge screw up on my part. I stayed up super late, and then I was like an hour away. It was like 9 o'clock, and then I just fell asleep, and it didn't work out. I don't know if it shows, but if it shows like when people log in, it'll show something at like 8 or 9 in the morning. I logged in for like a minute, and I was just gonna leave it open, and I couldn't. I fell asleep. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, just to fill in our listeners, we had a special Que Madre episode with Adam Vega. We were going to have Leo on at the same time, what we were jokingly calling our mansplaining episode. But yeah, we're on. Want to hear more about what you've been working on, what you've been cooking up at the lab, and yeah, like we usually ask our guests to kind of start off and fill us in with their origin story, like what made you care about community? What does it mean to you? Early influences? What's the lowdown?
I think if there's two fundamental influences to my development, not only as a person, but more particularly as like as far as like my political awareness, it would have to be number one, my mom being from Mexico City, um, having that as a reference point of just spending so much time in that city during my childhood, and also seeing how my mom, a woman from a family where like her father died when she was 15 and she was the oldest one, so she became jokingly my grandma's second husband. So having that, going into that family, and then also having a lesbian aunt also be the trifecta of that. So growing up in that environment, it was always very um, women heavy, and it was very heavily influenced by that, because I knew for a fact, and I'd seen it multiple times growing up, that my mom would make dudes buckle. Like she would make like the macho type of dudes, she would make them buckle. I've made her watch Cops buckle. Like and she's an amazing haggler. We love going to yard sales, and so I have so much fun with my mom, is just hanging out with her as a person. So that was a huge influence. And the second part of the influence would have to be growing up in a relatively middle class, upper middle class, no, mostly middle class white neighborhood. She was able to finagle her way into a living situation that worked out for us, for the family. But it also meant that I was going to school being surrounded by these kids that I didn't really grow up in their environment with their resources. And being as handsome and dark as I am, it doesn't go well with a lot of the aggressions that these people had. So I grew up understanding white people from a very different perspective than most of my other organizer friends that either were in Mexican heavy neighborhoods or just kind of grew up around their own people all the time. So those two contrasts are really what ended up developing who I was as a person. I don't necessarily identify as Chicano, because that's not really, like, I didn't come up in the Chicano movement. I wasn't listening to oldies. I didn't grow up in the hood surrounded by other Mexicans until I got into maybe late middle school. And by that time, you're kind of pretty somewhat formed, right? So that's also why my English is so on point, but that's also why my Spanish is really on point too, because of the two contrasting worlds that I kind of came up in. So now it's just utilizing those privileges to be able to flex them and put more tools and more resources in the people around me that I do see that are doing the work that are going to help our communities in the long run.
That's great. Thank you so much for all the work you do. I got to meet you for the first time when you invited some activists who had done some civil disobedience with taking over, was it a pipeline? Not too long ago. So ever since then, I just have been really interested in the work that you all do at the Lab 805. I know you've got a mask making operation right now, helping with mutual aid. If you'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about that.
We do. I'm very comfortable with going straight into what we've been doing since the Corona crisis happened, because I think that's really like probably going to be the more useful information for anybody that's listening, is kind of like how we could start doing practical things on the ground right now. So before the before the Corona crisis, this place had paid its bills for the most part being a sign shop, doing car wraps and printing shirts and doing artist merch and doing things like that. But since the crisis happened, everything went into shutdown. The one thing that we did have available to us was that my girlfriend's mom was a seamstress that got laid off a month and a half before the crisis happened. So we had already been working on setting up her sewing operation. We were able to get that going very fast. She immediately started producing masks. I told her, don't worry about it. Make as many as you can. I'll figure out how to sell them. And within an Instagram post, we immediately were backed up on orders. So that led me to start thinking about how to expand the operation, because I knew that if I could get more fabric, it was easy to find more seamstresses. My mom had friends that were seamstresses. Like, there's so many seamstresses out there, right? So we were able to get that going. And over the course of, I think, the last month and a half, it's been total. The last month, we have snowballed this operation into something that I'm incredibly proud of, because every single step of what I'm about to tell you next is like, it's infinitely expandable and can be duplicated in other places. But more importantly, everybody's making well over 15 bucks an hour. Everybody's getting paid per piece, depending on how much they produce, and they could come to the shop and produce it. But what I really encourage everybody to do is kind of set up places at home. So we have, my girlfriend's mom is still sewing the masks. There's an older lady in Santa Paula that's also sewing masks. There's 2 seamstresses that show up here. We set up an industrial sewing station operation. I offered them from the beginning, please, you sure you don't want to take it home? They're like, no, we got kids. We ain't trying to be at home right now. Like, we'll happily show up here and hang out with you for a while. Like, all right, cool. And then I have another one of my mom's friend that comes in on the weekends to sew. So what we're doing is everybody gets paid per piece on the mask. We worked it out. We worked out an average of what it is that they were able to produce in like any given hour. And then we kind of added on a bunch to that and broke that down into how many pieces. And then that's how we came up with the per piece price. So for example, the other part after the masks, I have a perfect example. So the masks get made and they come out white. The cool thing about doing this is that when I had to go to downtown LA to get fabrics, everybody was scrambling for all the other fabrics and nobody was going for white fabric for obvious reasons. So they're white, and then they go through a printing process. And by the time they're done with the printing process, then we end up doing full color images on them. I took a picture of my dog. So we got a picture of my doggy mask. That one's cute. I got a SpongeBob one. My favorite one's the kitty one. There's a kitty one. So we've been cranking out masks, but also aside from the sewing, they still need to get printed on. So preparing those packets, heat pressing them, putting the elastics through are all responsibilities that kind of get spread amongst a small team here. And it's 2 twin girls, for example, that live around the corner. They've been coming here since we used to do our summer workshops, and they've been working with us on learning how to use the machines for a few years. So they were able to drop right in. And these are 2 girls that are like out of high school. They're twins. They're both in their LGBTQ relationships respectively. But the important part is that they could show up here at their own schedule and that they could take operations home with them, or they could do stuff. And where else are you going, especially in this economy, it's going to be really hard to find some kind of economic solvency to cover bills and to be able to do things, right? So fortunately, we're killing it right now. And the problem that I have is kind of the opposite problem of what most businesses would have, is that we have the infrastructure set up here, but one of the artists that we work with, we made her samples, and then within one podcast that she put up, it immediately ballooned from nothing to an order of 2,000 masks. So we were immediately behind schedule. Immediately, that's when we added on more of the seamstresses. That's when we added on more of the operation. And that's why I encouraged everybody, yo, buy a heat press, take it home, and then you could continue this at your pad and blah, blah, blah. So I'm really starting to look at the next few weeks and the next few months as how I'm going to normalize the production of what we have around here, and how now that we've finished that 2,000 piece order, how we're going to start doing a bunch of designs with different artist friends. That way they have their limited edition collection and they could post it and they could sell it and they can handle the shipping. They could handle the distribution amongst their networks. That way it doesn't fall on us to have to be shipping things out to places. That's already a whole other logistical thing. So we found a good way that everybody makes a good amount of money all the way through the structure. It's all locally based. It's all ever expandable. And it's something that we're incredibly, incredibly proud of and very happy of. So that, and then that's also given us the freedom to, within these last few days that these protests and these marches have popped up around the county, we've been able to throw some support behind the organizers that in a lot of these cases are very, very young, new organizers that have never organized anything before, and being like, here, we'll put in a bunch of masks, we'll let you borrow our audio equipment, we'll help you figure out a route if you want, we'll help you do this, we'll help you do that. So I don't necessarily have to be at the front lines anymore. It's a lot better for me to get behind the group and kind of push forward the directions that I believe we should be moving in.
That's awesome. Who organized the BLM Oxnard action?
There was one yesterday afternoon that happened in Plaza Park. That was organized by, it was just a younger Mexican chick, and then she reached out to another homegirl, Debbie, and the homegirl, Jessica. So they helped her coordinate it, but it wasn't necessarily because they had a political plan or an organization that they worked with. A lot of this shit's just happening spontaneously out of the outrage from just regular kids and regular younger folks that don't have experience in this, but they do have that outrage. So my job as an organizer, especially an organizer that kind of has been through the battles in the pre-Trump era, the post-Trump era, and now the post-Corona era, is to kind of make all those resources available. And if they really are trying to make some changes, then connect them with the people that are working on things like trying to scale back and trying to scale back police department budgets, trying to get more money for mental health resources, trying to see if we could get a city to do the rent freeze or something like that, you know, or do some of the tangible things that are not so sexy as when you're running around yelling and screaming, but also not as cathartic as that either, you know. So some of the tangible things that could be done on a regular basis to start to push forward just to push back a little bit. Tenant unions. Oh my God, do I believe in tenant unions? I would love to see more tenant unions pop up, and I will help anybody trying to get that going.
Yeah, that fresh energy is so important. One thing that we were talking about today at our Black Lives Matter action in Santa Barbara was just whenever we do action supporting Black folks, to make sure that we are also including them in the planning of it, to center them, since that is the community that we're trying to be not only allies but accomplices with right now. So just turning to something a little bit more lighthearted, can you tell us about your Tengo Talento episode?
Yeah, sure. I've been who I've been for a very long time. It's a lot of tomfoolery, a lot of joking. I got into doing stand-up comedy when I was probably 33. So it was a very short time ago, like 5-6 years ago, I got into doing stand-up comedy, and I love it. It's my favorite thing to do. I went on to produce shows. Being the organizer that I am, I tried to organize a bunch of comedians into a collective to do production and to do promotion and all that other stuff. But they do too many drugs and they're too all over the place. So that didn't work out. So I've always loved that. I've always enjoyed myself. I've always been a character. And during the holiday season, my girlfriend's family, they're very, very serious about singing. So they do a lot of karaoke at our holiday events. And me being who I am, I'm not going to sit by on the sidelines. I'm going to have to jump in. So for years, I've been doing karaoke performances with the family, and they love it. They also watch that show heavily. I'd never seen Tengo Talento, or I think it's called Tengo Talento. I've never seen that show. I've known of it. I've seen little snippets here and there, but it was never something that I was serious about until we were watching it at her house one day, and she's like, yo, you should go on that. I was like, I would be great on that show, wouldn't I? At the very least, we'd all get a good laugh out of it. And I told her, go ahead and let me know when the auditions are. And if we figure out when the auditions are, then I'll be good. The auditions were like a week from that day. So she called my bluff. She called my bluff, and I was like, all right, let's go. So we did it. They had a blast. They called me back. I went to the studio in Burbank. And we had fun, but I didn't know that it was going to be on TV, because they said that they still had to record like an intro video, and they were going to come out to Ventura to do it. And the day that we had scheduled to come out was the day that Governor Newsom shut down the state. So they called me and they're like, nah, don't worry about it. Everything's on hiatus. We don't know how things are going to go right now, but we'll touch base and reconnect and pick up where we left off when the whole crisis is over. So I was like, okay. I kept the secret for nothing. I could have been telling my friends this whole time what I did, but, and I didn't pay it any mind. And then last week, people started tagging me, and I was like, damn, I missed it. I didn't get to record the whole thing, but my girlfriend got it. I was like, all right, well, secret's out. Everything's out, and everybody got a kick out of it. I'm sure they'll invite me back at some point in the future. And if I do, I'll come up with something more ridiculous.
That was so awesome. You were hamming it up. I really
Yeah.
appreciated it. So going from one very great performer to another, Snow is who you want to play?
Yeah, throw that. I love her jams. Yo, if there is one artist that I would get behind in 2020, and this is why I'm a huge fan of her, like not only is she Mexican, heavy bilingual, spent time living in Mexico, been from Texas to San Jose, is a rhyme animal that could run circles around most of your favorite rappers, is queer, very openly in an amazing relationship with her girlfriend that's a Afro-Latina Puerto Rican, like, and she just goes hard. I love her jams, and all the kids love it too. So I definitely blast a lot of her music, and she's a lot of fun to listen to, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to work with her on a few levels here and there. But that's because I actively went out of my way to try and connect with her and be like, yo, you don't know how much I'm down to support you. Like, I'm down to get behind you in whatever you want to do. So yeah, she's definitely dope. I like her.
All right, I'm gonna throw on How I Do It.
I got a bunch of money in the bank, but I got me some bills, so I fucked up the rear. I am a Mexican bitch, so when I ball at the Galleria, they call me Maria. I give a fuck what you call me, just don't call me broke. This is Susan, just back up your Kia. I got a big whip with a lip, and I just fuck for it, que si yo una silla. Mucha gente no les gusta que tengo talento y que no necesito de nadie. Entro a la pinche meeting pa' que digan que quieren mis fans, yo les digo que paguen. Dicen que quieren que yo les enseñe cómo hacer lo mismo y aquí está el detalle. Yo no me vendo y por eso me odian, sinceramente yo les mento la madre. And that's how I do it, that's how I do it, that's how I do it, and that's how it's done. That's how I do it, that's how I do it, and that's how I do it, and that's how it's done. That's how I do it. 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 And that's how it's done. Cause that's how it's done. I meet a lot of people that be telling me I'm so lucky that I got it made. I won't consider myself anybody till Mexicans ain't gotta work as a maid. I give a fuck what the internet say. I ain't gonna make this shit part of my day. You text a fan number I made or don't. Really, I'm more than okay. I'm Gucci, keep it G G G G G. In my way, then beep 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 beep. Nod your head like C C C C C. I know that you really see me. PC reason, bitches all on the net. Stepping all on they neck. Why the fuck you upset? I'm not into your men. Not my fault he online. Commenting that I'm fine. Said he heard that I'm bi. Trying to find out if that's right. Ya tengo tiempo diciendo lo mismo. India María ni de aquí ni de allá. Vinieron mis padres directo de México, armaron su lío y se fueron para atrás. Dijeron que chingue su madre con Trump. Tomando modelo, no pega corona. Mi padre quería tener un hijo bravo, por eso salí de mi madre cabrona. Now I got a business and I need some cash. I got a kid and he growing up fast. He tell me, mommy, these rappers is trash, but if I let him rap, he be showing his ass. Cause half of these rappers be having an image crisis every time they go through it. Everybody talking real in their songs, but pussy boy can't do it. But this how I do it. That's how I do it. That's how I do it, and that's how it's done. That's how I do it. That's how I do it, and that's how I do it, and that's how it's done. That's how I do it. 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 That's how I do it, and that's how it's done. Cause that's how it's done. I like to pop off at shows. I drink tequila, I'm as real as they come. But I just found out even people I put on is jealous of mine, so I buy me a gun and it go boom, 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 pow, kill at will. And this one's Fergie. If I put you on and you try to yell onto me, I swear to God that I will do you dirty. Cause I am a legend, but y'all ain't gon' see it till after I'm gone. But that's just how it goes. But I'ma be honest, I don't care to be one if that's what it takes. Cause my kid gotta grow. But I'ma talk my shit and I'ma rap like I always did. Still gon' flex with a Mexican grip. Still sing chente when I get lit. This new to y'all, baby boy, I've been. But I rap that flag even way back when labels said, baby, this ain't it. Now they trying to make another me. Wait, oh shit, hold up, goddamn, can I get my cut? Everything that I've been making, they be taking what's up. They want our culture, but don't show love. They want our money, but they don't want us, bruh. Shit, that's how I do it. That's how I do it. You know, shit. How do I do it? How do I do it? I don't know. This how I do it. This how I do it.
That is so good.
She's really good. Hopefully we can do some cool stuff this year.
Pretty fucking dope. I was gonna ask you, you've been organizing for a while, like the world is just so hard to navigate right now. I just feel like there's so much going on. And I'm just thinking about a lot of the new, like you were mentioning, young organizers that are coming up. Like, what advice would you give them right now?
I think the most important thing right now is to find people that you could work with in real life and online. Like, find the things. They don't necessarily have to believe everything that you believe. And And usually when they don't, that's good, because especially if you're a young organizer, and a lot of the time if you're an old organizer, you have a lot of blind spots that you're not paying attention to. Dudes specifically, if they're gonna be doing any organizing, drop the panty chasing. Like, that's not the space or the place to do it, and rightfully so, they're going to get called out for it. But egos as dudes, we have that kind of dominate spaces and take up a lot of space, and that's one of the things that I had to be very well of early on, because even before I got into organizing, I mean, growing up, my mom was always like, let other people speak, let other people speak. So it's, sometimes I'll let that be known. If I get really excited about something, I got to tell people, yo, if I ramble on too much, which I have a tendency to do, just, tell me to pump the brakes, and it's cool. I'm not going to take it personal. Like, I'm sorry if you have to remind me of these things. I'll try and be aware, but and that's the other part too, is that as young organizers, even if you feel like you don't come into the situation with anything to give or anything to provide, and all you have is anger and emotion, and you just want to make changes happen, like, that's a privilege that some of us older folks don't necessarily have. We don't necessarily have the energy to be able to disperse to that after working all day, after taking care of kids, if we have health deteriorating issues, right? So it's, I think more than anything with this, what we need to do as people of color in this country in particular, is we need to find those communities that we feel comfortable working within, regardless of what the issues are. We need to feel comfortable with the people that we're working with, and then we could work towards the direction that we all collectively want to go, and we could start figuring out those details. I think that's also kind of like something that might be a little bit of outdated information, given that right now everything's happening so rapid fire and things are so willingly to get, they're going to get ugly because of the economic situation, short term and long term. So I think people are understanding that a lot faster, and I might not have to say that. So right now, again, it goes back to finding the people that are doing the type of work that you want to see done, and trying to connect and throw support and work with them on any way, shape, or form. A lot of young organizers, through no fault of their own, can't necessarily look towards a lot of older organizers, because us as older organizers, a lot of times we went hard for the few years that we went hard, then we got burned out, and then we just walked away from organizing. So the only reason why I'm still here is because this is something that I grew up in. I didn't go to school and I didn't study sociology. I didn't do any of these things in university. I dropped out of high school. Everything that I've done has been because I'm a social butterfly, and I have to work with what I have around me and the people around me to work on collective projects. So I'm already used to doing that. But it's not everybody's going to be woke right off the bat. Not everyone's going to know which direction to run in right off the bat, and we need to have the leniency to be able to work and communicate with the people that are doing that. Of course, we got to be able to trim the fat. And we got to be able to be like, you know what, I'm not fucking with that person. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. I don't know where the rate. But I don't want to mess with that person necessarily because they're problematic for this reason and that reason. And that sucks, because sometimes that'll hijack whole organizations. And I've had that happen because of my inaction, thinking that people were going to figure things out on their own. And by the time it happens, everything's been cancered out, and it throws away years of work. But also, things are happening fast right now. I'm not so worried about the younger generation having the right idea, because they're in a much more conscious space than I was at their age, or that a lot of us were even just a few years ago. Things have moved so fast in the last few years, since Trayvon Martin, but even before that. But those are like those nationwide hits that cause those points of discussion. Find people that could communicate and say the things that you want to see communicated. And then on my end, as an older organizer, is to make sure that I could communicate a lot of the concepts and ideas that we know and that we understand into a language that's more malleable, and that's more, it's easier on the ears for these younger kids to be able to catch. Like, some of the older people that I've organized with aren't going to be able to communicate with the younger kids that I'm also like kind of getting ratchet with, it's not, and by younger kids, I don't mean much younger kids. No, that's a lie. My friends' kids, we have fun. But even though they don't realize we're having political conversations, we're having political conversations because they have to do with the well-being of everybody versus the individuality factor, right? So yeah, find people that you could link with. It's not, and the other part is it's not, most of this organizing work isn't going to be protest marches, throwing parties, and having fun. Most of it, to make some real changes, is going to be boring. It's going to be very boring. But you have to learn to balance both of those things.
Totally. Yeah, I hear you. A lot of the work is going to be boring. It's going to be paperwork. It's going to be logistics.
Yeah.
You know, all of that stuff. And I'm just like, oh, it's not as hell raising as like being out in the street with people who believe in the same shit that you do. Oh, now I'm cursing too. Sorry. And I'm wondering about the shape of this new economy coming after the pandemic, COVID-19, whatever that world actually looks like for us. And I'm just thinking about what the lab is doing. Like you're kind of serving as like this home, this like hub. And I know about hubs that are kind of springing up in LA. There's stuff going on in the Bay Area. Like, how do we link up our networks more effectively? And as a social butterfly, I think you can speak to the power, because I've seen this in my own organizing work, of just asking. Like if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm totally resonating with this person's vision, I just got to email them or ask them like, hey, how can we collaborate? There's power there. More often than not, people are down.
Yeah.
And some more
And
collaborations between the lab and La Casa.
Yeah, let's hear about that.
We've helped throw support behind La Casa. We worked with Andrea. We've done a few things there, but also with El Centro, we've thrown support behind them in any way, shape that we can. Organizations out in LA, Las Ovas and La Concha, autonomous communities in Mexico. Like, really, when it comes to the economic portion of it, what we've done is, I remember in the late 90s, after NAFTA passed in Mexico and the US, the trade agreement, I remember seeing the swap meets get bigger. I remember seeing more street vendors. And I remember asking my grandma, yo, I feel like the swap meets are way bigger and they're more often than they were before. She's like, yeah, when people lose their job, they got to figure out some way to scramble to cover those bases. And of course it makes sense. But it wasn't until that she said that it hit me. I'm like, oh, you're right. Inflation had gone up over the course of a few years. It was 4 pesos to $1. And when this happened, I think it was already at like 12 pesos for $1. Right now it's at 22 for $1. So you see how 30 years of neoliberalist policies just destroy an economy. And one of the first things that people do is they immediately start to find hustles that they could turn around and make some money off of. That's also kind of what I've been preparing for the last few years, and why I stepped back from organizing so much on the front line, because I realized that we're always running out of resources, and I can't be working my butt off here at the shop just to dump resources into whatever collective actions we have going on and buying supplies all the time and doing that, because 2 things are happening. I'm spreading myself thin because I'm spending so much of my creativity and time organizing that's creativity and time that doesn't go to covering my bills and covering the bases, right? So it's not so manageable. And then at the time I was doing stand-up comedy too and organizing those fools. So it was like spreading my creativity, my time, and my resources amongst 3 different things. Even though there was mutual benefits for doing it all, it's not something that's super sustainable long-term. So what I started doing is I started getting behind brands, behind projects, behind organizers specifically, and people that I knew politically we're aiming for the same thing. It wasn't necessarily something in particular that worked with this. We have one friend, Martin Alberto, who wrote a book. He's a PhD. He wrote a book called 21 Miles of Scenic Beauty, and then Oxnard, where he talks about class consciousness. He talks about colorism in there, and he puts it in a very beautiful way to where he sells so much merch, but it's because his stories connect so much with elementary school kids, middle school kids, and high school kids. So I brainstorm with him on where to go, how to communicate this, blah, 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 blah. And then he runs off and does it on his own with the support that we throw behind him. We print a bunch of stuff out for him, but also he shows up here to print stuff. So people are always welcome to come show up here and work on their projects because they know that I'm spread thin. So the more that they're willing to work on their projects, the better for everybody. They get access to the resources. I don't have to, after I get them going and train them and teach them or put them together with other friends that'll train and teach them, then it doesn't necessarily have to rely on me and I could be gone for the day. I don't necessarily have to be there. So it really has been about setting up a community. And that doesn't mean that we have a ton of people here. It just means that those that really do fit the model of what it is that we're trying to get to have enough discipline and enough self-interest in their own projects to know that we're supporting them and take advantage of the opportunities that we kind of have available here, right? So but it's also something that I've been wanting to duplicate so much. I would love, my dream job would just be going around the country to different organizing spaces or physical spaces and helping them set up some self-sustaining economy things that they could make themselves and resell or fit this gap. I spent 14 years making signs and printing shirts and coming up with merch. I've done everything from bootleg Lakers and Dodgers gear at the World Series and the tournament and the championships and the Bernie Sanders rally. We make a killing selling bootleg AOC and Bernie stuff over there. To like, I know how to hustle, right? So it's just kind of trying to teach folks how to hustle, and then you make enough money to cover your bases and you have autonomy. You don't have to be depending on some of these nonprofits. You don't have to be depending on some of this other stuff. At the end of the day, it's people power, and people will always be willing to exchange things with you, whether it be food, and if it's a little sign shop that you run out of an organizing space, that's the immediate bartering tool. I've never had to pay for car tires. I've never had to pay for haircuts. I've never had to pay, like all the practical daily things, I've just bartered in exchange for sign work or graphic work, and that's always worked out. So I would love to be able to teach that on to another generation.
That's what it's about. That's definitely what it's about. That's what we're about too. And we've been trying to get this project off the ground with some other folks, Diane Fugino, Chelsea Lancaster, Matef, up in Santa Barbara, called Cooperation Santa Barbara, based on Cooperation Jackson, which there was a book about called Jackson Rising. So we would love for you to be involved in that, because what a good fit that would be.
I would love to. Yeah, I got to touch base with Chelsea. Chelsea's down. I have a real fondness for organizers in Santa Barbara. Like I'm very fond of Chelsea, Naira, Frank, just everybody at El Centro, people that are doing stuff at the Casa de la Raza, you ladies. Like it's very beautiful, and at the same time, like it's cohesive and it's still there. Like a lot of organizers around, we're in a much bigger area in the Ventura County area. A lot of organizers come, flash in the pan for a little bit, and then off to do something else. Like everybody out in SB is very serious about what they're doing, even though they might not necessarily every day be doing something. But the point is, the projects that I see come about of there are beautiful.
We have some really amazing people up here, and I always like it comes back to that point about building community, building relationships with people that you can see, creating this new world together with. And we have everybody that we need. I think that's what blows me away the most, is just we really do. And it's again, back to your point, the resources. How do we bring in the revenue streams so that we're not depleted doing this work, and instead we're moving towards that model of transformative justice, of all of that, of resilience, beyond resilience, all of that work. So yeah, there's a lot of alignment happening right now, and it's awesome. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, one of the phrases that I love. Also, I love the Santa Barbara folks out there, because I have a really fun time partying with them too. Because I think that's very important.
Lila Downs is fun.
Yeah, I think it's very important though. As organizers, it is very, very important that we party together, and that we could hang out together, and that we could get drunk together, and that we could kick it together, and that we could joke and laugh together. That's the glue. Like that's also part of the glue, and that's a really important part that I have to remind organizers sometimes. I was like, I know tensions are high, aggressions are here, there's a lot of emotion going on, but y'all need to hang out with each other afterwards. Go eat afterwards. Go have a beer afterwards. Go have a smoke break afterwards. Like you need to decompress, and that's also a part of the bonding experience.
Totally.
Yeah. And one phrase that I feel is a very good kind of northern star for any project that I kind of get behind and do, so I don't lose track of what the intention are, is to defend joy and to organize rage. So I feel that those are two short amount of words, but it's a good principles to go off.
I'm writing that down.
I gotta make merch. That's something I've been meaning to make, something with that, but I haven't done it.
I'd wear something with that on it.
Yeah.
So this is supposed to be our special Papis Day episode, and I know, like people talk about fatherhood as like biological fatherhood, but I also see it as like fathering the movement. And when we talk about Que Madre, it's also about mommies in the movement, not just people who have physically pushed out a baby, but also like who's helping to build this new world that Jess mentioned earlier. So I've just been so happy that you wanted to include that you accepted the invitation to be on this. So this will be part 2 to the part 1 with Adam. Right now, would you like to play another song before we have our last few words from you?
Huh. I didn't plan on it, but Cafeteras just put out a new one. That one's a good one. The Cafeteras just put out a new one that has to do with running with Ahmad. That could be a good one. I could have written something down. I could have brainstormed this out. Oscar Chavez died recently. Oscar Chavez has some good ones too. Rata de dos patas. Lila Downs has some fire. I got one. Ana Tiju Antifa Dance. How about that one? I think that one fits the moment. Ana Tiju Antifa Dance. That one is a really, really good one that I think would be fire right now. Yeah. Ay, ¿quién es la niña bonita?
This is Gloria. She's 5 years old, and she joins me for almost all of my Zooms, at least for a little bit.
Oh, that's beautiful. Going back to what you're saying right now about motherhood, I'll buy you some time till you get the song ready. But I very early on I realized that in a lot of these organizing spaces, it's mostly women, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And anytime that you're working on projects that are long term, I always find that it ends up being mostly women that are here putting in the work on behalf of their community, but also because of lack of autonomy at home a lot of times too. So it's something that I try to encourage as much of that as possible, and use the privilege that I have of being a loud, straight, handsome Mexican dude to like kind of center those voices through as well. Just like what we were saying earlier with the Black Lives Matter protests and marches. It's like, yo, I didn't organize any of that march, but I showed up with the loudspeaker. I showed up with the clipboard. I showed up with all the things. They had no idea how to do things. I suggested a route that we had used before. And the first thing that I said when they gave me the mic was like a little thing about how to do security. But more importantly, I was like, yo, all our Black friends and family need to be coming up here and dominating this microphone space. It's not our position to be up here leading the charge on this one. And they happily ran with it too. So yeah, spread the resources.
I have the song ready.
Fired up.
I can't really hear it. Let's see.
I thought that was just me. As long as the audio goes out right, good, right?
Let's see. Sorry, my kid was like freaking out right now. So I'm like, I don't know if y'all want to hear that right now. Let's see. I think I can pull it up on I don't know if he's calming down, but we'll see. Okay.
Somos los choros, los fetos, los caras de nana, los caras de nada. Somos los patis pelados, los comas, los rotos, los chulos y quemados. Somos los cholos morenos, los chicos sin pelo en la lengua, ya está. Somos morenos y que bueno, no tenemos miedo, no tenemos nada. Para mí que tu izquierda siempre fue derecha. fecha. Me da la sospecha que tú te aprovechas, que nada cosecha ni prende la mecha. De ahí con tu fuera no te prendo vela. Baja y escucha la lucha de esta seinao, tremenda trucha. Que no hay excusa para hacer la ducha, no se me confunda, buena capucha. Papagay, ¿cómo estás? No necesito estar high. Este sistema se cae si tú no compras. Papagay, ¿cómo estás? No necesito estar high. Este sistema se cae si tú no compras. El amigo de todo, no amigo de nadie. Cántalo suave, échale clave. ¿Cómo se hace la clave y el pase la llave para que todo esto se acabe? Todo se cae, todo se sabe. Irak, Haití, Chile combate a liberar este mundo completo si tocan a uno. Papagay, ¿cómo estás? No necesito estar high. Este sistema se cae si tú no compras. Papagay, ¿cómo estás? No necesito estar high. Este sistema se cae si tú no compras.
That was so great. I love her.
That
So,
was
you
it.
know, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said, yeah, it was another banger. It was good.
I enjoy your musical taste.
I also listen to a lot of reggaeton. I've been listening to a lot more reggaeton in the last year or two than I have to even hip hop music that I grew up with. So I'm all over the place.
Well, this time really flew by. You know, there's openings at KZAA for shows if you would like to do your own show, but you're always welcome to come back. What are your last parting words that you would like to share with our listeners?
My last parting words would be fortify and reinforce the systems that you believe in right now. Fortify and then reach out to the people immediately around you, reach out to people through social media pages that you like that are following and doing something in the direction that you like. It's going to be really, really hard over the course of the next few months and the next few years to be able to fight against the constant information that we're going to get bombarded with from all angles. So it's also good to start working on those projects that revolve around living situations. That's why I feel strongly about tenants unions. We help form a few, and oh my God, the world of difference that it makes when undocumented people in an apartment complex that are normally used to living in fear from the cops and evictions decide to get together and form a tenant union, and the power surge that you see run through that community and that group is incredible. There's very few things that could replace that. And again, very heavily women-led as as a movement, because the dudes don't necessarily like have the communication there to be able to do it, and they know that their women's are going to be good at arguing their points through and pushing it through. So again, it's using everybody's strengths to support and to push that through, right? So it just kind of works out. But then there's also have flexibility. There's going to be environments that we're in where people are going to say, like, they'll say some anti-black stuff and you're like, yo, you got to pump your brakes on that, this, that, whatever. And in most cases, they'll be like, oh, you know what? You're right. I got to be, because there's a huge influx of people coming into organizing movements. I'm not going to expect my black friends and family to be the ones to check them on that shit. That's my job to check them. Like, I don't want them to have to be distracted by that or have to feel insecure or uncomfortable with that. But also as dudes, that exact same thing applies to the dudes that come into the organizing spaces that don't necessarily have a lot of the experience and are just here saying some of the more aggressive things or some of the things here and there. Like people are watching protests on TV, so they think that they could show up to a peaceful, chill protest and that things could just start getting smashed and everything else like that. Like it's also our job if those are our homies. Like, yo, check it, just tone it down. So use whatever privileges it is that you have to work for the collective of everybody, and start to reinforce those projects that you believe in, and start to talk to your neighbors. Even that, just start talking to your neighbors, start talking to people down the street, start talking to old ladies, old dudes, start talking to younger kids, families. Like start communicating outside of your immediate comfort zone, which is also not generally good advice if you are you suffer from like anxiety and you're more of a homebody or it's something like that. Then social media might be a good one. It's not going to go to waste. Like social media is there. There's more communication there going on than everywhere. So do that. Yeah.
That's all amazing advice. And I'm going to wait to see merchandise that says defend joy and organize rage. I will wear it.
Gotta do that.
Totally. I'm down.
We'll make masks. Those will be the masks.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, Leo, thank you so much for being on Que Madre with us, and it's so awesome to like know you're here like on the Central Coast and just get building. Thank you.
Yo, it's an honor to be asked to be on here. Like, y'all have had some dope guests. And I know Adam was a dope guest too. I love Adam. I got a lot of love for Adam. But yeah, I really applaud and I admire everything that you two ladies do, and anything that we could support or anything we could help out with. You count on us. You have our full support. And thank y'all very much. Y'all are incredible. It was an honor to be a part of this show.
Thank you. You and Adam are the first men ever to be on this show, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dope. All right.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you too, ladies. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Thank you to all our listeners. Bye.
This was our special Papis Day episode for the movement.
The mansplaining episode.
The healthy masculinity episode, huh?
Healthy masculinity. There you go. That's what it's about.
All right.